There's a moment just before a balloon pops when you can feel the tension stretch past safety. That tight, trembling edge? It's the same one that rises in your chest during a high-stakes meeting, a family argument, or a midnight panic attack. The real question is, do you know how to untie the knot before everything explodes? Welcome to Guide to Reads, where wisdom isn't just absorbed, it's applied. Today we're stepping into the heat of pressure with How to Untie a Balloon by negotiation psychologist Kumar Christian X. But this isn't just a book about conflict resolution. It's about rewiring your nervous system under fire. Because in moments of crisis, it's not knowledge that fails us. It's accessing that knowledge when we need it most. We've all been there. Face flushed, heart pounding, words tumbling too fast. Or worse, stuck in silence. These are the physiological signs of pressure overload. And they don't just impact conversations, they erode relationships, decisions, and reputations. Author Ryan Dunlap, a former SWAT hostage negotiator and Special Victims Unit detective, knows this better than anyone. Now, through his consultancy Conflictish, he coaches leaders and professionals to perform in the pressure cooker, not despite the stress, but through a deep understanding of it. In this episode, you'll discover tested strategies to recognize your personal pressure point, systematically map your emotional landscape, and take calm, confident action, even when everything's on the line. So if you're ready to stop reacting and start responding, this video is your roadmap. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Dangerous Inflation. Picture this: a quiet room, a handful of professionals, and a simple challenge. A balloon, a breath, and a goal. Blow it up as big as you can, as fast as you can. What begins as amusement quickly becomes tension. Faces redden, lungs strain, the balloons swell, stretch, and tremble under pressure. Then comes the second instruction. Now, untie it. That's when everything shifts. The room stills. Fingers fumble with trembling knots, rubber slips through sweat-slick hands. Some succeed, most don't. And now and then, without warning, the balloon bursts. It's a striking metaphor for life, because pressure, in all its forms, is easier to build than to release. It grows fast. It retreats slowly. And the warning signs? Often too subtle, too quiet, until it's too late. Consider the surgeon, calm, collected, composed. Yet behind the facade, pressure has been mounting for months. A growing stack of patient charts, endless responsibilities, longer hours, fewer moments of peace. Until one day, in a routine meeting, a small schedule change is announced, and something breaks. It wasn't that moment that caused the outburst, it was the 1,000 moments before it. And what took months to build, unraveled in seconds. That's the first truth of the balloon. But here's the second. Releasing pressure requires patience. The body needs time, the mind needs space. When anger flares in an argument, the body surges with adrenaline and cortisol, chemicals of survival designed for fight or flight. And no matter how quickly someone calms down, the biology says otherwise. It takes 20, sometimes 30 minutes, for those signals to clear from the bloodstream. Try to reconcile too soon, and the conversation reignites like dry tinder touched by a spark. Picture a couple arguing over chores. One storms out. 5 minutes later, they return, convinced they're ready to talk. But their body hasn't caught up, the balloon is still stretched, and once again it all explodes. There's a final truth hidden in the silence before the pop. People rarely know how close they are to rupture. The executive who pushes through burnout. The parent who says yes to everything, even as exhaustion whispers louder each day. They seem in control, until the moment they're not. The genius of the balloon lies in its simplicity. It shows us that pressure is invisible until it's undeniable. That thresholds can't always be sensed from the inside. And that learning how to slow down, to release tension gradually, to honor our emotional limits, is not just a psychological insight, it's a survival skill. Because sooner or later, we all carry something stretched too tight. And unless we learn how to untie the knot, we will learn what it means to burst. 2. Stretched to your limit. Identifying personal, professional breaking points. Pressure doesn't always announce itself with drama. Often, it seeps in quietly, until one day something inside you starts to fray. You're speaking, But the words aren't landing. You're working, but you're no longer sharp. You're present, but barely connected. Dunlap has seen this unraveling firsthand, not in beginners, but in seasoned professionals. Veteran officers on the job for years, trained in procedure, skilled in confrontation, and yet in the heat of a high-stakes encounter, they unravel. Words falter, judgment blurs, not from ignorance, but from overload. Remaining composed in conflict isn't about personality, it's a skill, and one that decays without practice. Under pressure, we default to instinct: fight, flee, freeze. And unless we've trained ourselves to respond otherwise, those defaults sabotage us right when clarity is most needed. This is where your balloon starts to stretch dangerously thin. But how do you know when you're approaching that limit? There are signs, subtle but telling. First, the mask begins to slip. We all wear one: the composed leader, the calm parent, the helpful colleague. But under pressure, that mask cracks. The voice sharpens, the smile fades. You react without filtering and surprise even yourself. Second, your performance begins to decline. The hospital director who once navigated chaos with precision now miscounts simple figures. The eloquent teacher stumbles through a sentence. These aren't isolated lapses. They are warning signs, hairline fractures that precede a collapse. Third, and perhaps most dangerously, you start thinking less clearly. Logic gives way to reactivity. You stop listening. You rush decisions. You act, not because it's right, but because you're under siege. Then come the symptoms: anger that flares without provocation, irritability that simmers beneath every conversation, disrupted sleep, strange dissociation, as though you're in the room but not in your own body. And yet, we're expected to communicate clearly, to stay reasonable, to de-escalate. But how? Dunlap draws a powerful analogy from law enforcement. In firearms training, officers are drilled relentlessly on what to do when a weapon malfunctions. A jam doesn't mean panic, it means procedure. They don't throw the weapon away. They clear it, reset, continue. But what about when communication jams? Where is that training? Too often we treat a failed conversation like a broken tool. We walk away, shut down, escalate. When in truth, the very moment when dialogue breaks is when it's needed most. Knowing your personal limit gives you leverage. Because just like a balloon, if you understand your threshold, you can intervene before the rupture. You can breathe. Step back. Choose your response rather than surrendering to it. This isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about recognizing the signals before they become explosions. This awareness, the ability to identify when you're near the edge, is what makes it possible to keep communicating even when every instinct tells you to walk away. And in a world that often rewards reaction over reflection, that's not just wisdom. It's power. 3. F.I.R.S.T. Steps to Managing Crises. Acronym-based crisis management. There's a special kind of silence in a crisis negotiation room. Not the absence of sound, but the suspension of certainty. One voice speaks to the person in crisis. A team works behind the scenes, piecing together fragments. Who is this person? What are they afraid of? What matters most to them? In hostage situations, no one acts alone. One negotiator speaks. Others gather intelligence, monitor tone shifts, track time. What looks chaotic from the outside is, in fact, choreographed. Because in the heart of disorder, effective negotiators follow a method. They isolate the noise. They break complexity into small, navigable parts. They identify what matters most. Then they act, with clarity, discipline, and repetition. It's from this model that Dunlap developed what he calls the F.I.R.S.T. steps, a 5-part method designed not just for SWAT teams, but for everyday professionals navigating high-pressure moments. Feelings, interests, relationships, situation, tolls, 5 lenses, 5 anchors. Let's walk through them, not in theory but in the lived story of Linda. Linda is a hospital administrator. Today, she faces difficult budget negotiations. She's not being held hostage. But the pressure? It's real. Departments are on edge, morale is fragile, resources are shrinking. Her every word, every pause, will ripple through the entire organization. The first step, feelings. Before anything else, she checks inward. What's going on inside her? Her heart is racing, she's tense. This, she realizes, is anxiety, the body's prelude to a perceived threat. By identifying it, she's already begun to reclaim control. Unchecked emotions distort reality. Naming them anchors her. Next, interests. What is she truly aiming for? Not just surface-level wins, but core goals. It's not about defending every budget item. It's about maintaining safe staffing, preserving team morale, and ensuring continuity of patient care. Pressure often tempts us to chase battles and lose sight of the war. This step realigns her with her purpose. Then, relationships. Who's at the table? Who supports her? Who pressures her? Linda sees clearly supportive nursing directors, a skeptical board, and a finance officer under stress of his own. She's not facing enemies. She's managing tensions between overlapping pressures. Understanding this web reduces friction and opens space for empathy. Fourth, situation. What are the hard facts? Not assumptions, not interpretations. Linda is facing a proposed 12% budget cut, impacting 3 departments. This is not a personal attack on her leadership, it's a logistical challenge with political dimensions. Stripping the emotion from the situation grounds her in what's actually real. Finally, tolls. What has all of this cost, personally, interpersonally? Linda notes 2 sleepless nights. Her relationship at home feels strained. A key staff member is close to quitting. These are not footnotes. They are red flags, signals that the pressure isn't just professional, it's human. When Linda lays all this out, feelings, interests, relationships, situation, tolls, the chaos loses its grip. She can now see which levers to pull, which tensions to ease, and which priorities require urgent action. The F.I.R.S.T framework doesn't eliminate pressure, but it transforms it into something structured, known, something you can act on. It is, in essence, the same discipline that keeps negotiators calm when the world around them is anything but. And when your own world begins to spiral, when conflict clouds your judgment and urgency floods your chest, these 5 steps bring you back. Not by suppressing the pressure, but by understanding it deeply and choosing your next move with intention. 4. Taking urgent action using the 3R framework. Specific action model, e.g., respond, resolve, reflect. There are moments when the clock doesn't just tick, it roars. Moments when every second feels loaded with consequence. In those moments, action isn't optional, it's demanded. Imagine the scene. A domestic violence call. A woman injured and in need of urgent medical care. A man armed and unstable barricaded in a room. His children still inside. Police arrive. Time is tight. Lives hang in the balance. There are 3 choices in such a moment. 1. Do nothing. Wait. Watch. Hope. But inaction, while it may feel safest, comes at a cost. The victim's condition worsens. The danger deepens. 2. Storm the room. Immediate forceful action. Decisive, but reckless. It may end the crisis, or ignite tragedy. Then there is a third path, imperfect but intentional. Proceed methodically while gathering information. This isn't indecision. It's disciplined urgency. And it's this mindset that Dunlap refines into a powerful tool. The 3R iterative progression framework. Because pressure doesn't only erupt in domestic standoffs. It simmers in boardrooms, in classrooms, in emergency rooms. And when the stakes rise, leaders, like negotiators, must navigate between chaos and control. Let's break it down. The first R, realize. This is the moment of clarity amid the fog. It means mapping the terrain. What do you actually know? What are your options? Imagine a product manager discovers a serious flaw just days before a launch. They pause, not to stall, but to realize the range of possible responses. Delay the launch, issue a partial fix, release with full transparency. The key isn't to know the perfect answer, but to know what can be acted on. The second R, respond. Now comes the moment of commitment. Choose, act, even in uncertainty. Our manager opts to delay the launch. They inform stakeholders, acknowledge the flaw, own the imperfection. No waiting for perfect clarity, just courageous, informed action. The third R, realign. This is where wisdom matures. After the action, you pause again, not to retreat, but to adjust. Was the decision effective? What changed as a result? If feedback reveals the delay caused more harm than the flaw might have, the manager pivots, accelerates a solution, offers early access, and adapts the message. The beauty of the 3R framework lies in its shape, not a straight line, but a circle. Leaders loop through it again and again. Realize, respond, realign. Each cycle brings new data, new clarity, new strength. The hostage negotiator uses the first words exchanged not only to diffuse tension, but to learn tone, intention, mental state. The executive monitors market reaction not for validation, but for insight, to guide the next message, the next move. This is not passive patience. It's strategic iteration, an antidote to both paralysis and panic. In moments of high urgency, the best don't leap blindly or freeze in fear. They move forward, step by intentional step, allowing decisions to evolve as understanding deepens. Because sometimes, surviving the storm is not about force or stillness, but about knowing when to move, how to listen, and how to adjust with purpose before the next wave arrives. 5. Controlled decompression. Strategies to release pressure methodically. There are moments when the pressure inside is so great, you can feel it pressing against your chest, words building behind clenched teeth, hands tightening, mind spinning faster than thought can follow. In these moments, clarity vanishes. You don't speak, you react. You don't decide, you defend. That's when damage happens. That's when bridges burn. That's when the balloon pops. But what if, in the very instant you felt the pressure rising, you had a method not just to endure it but to release it and safely? Dunlap calls it the S.T.O.P protocol, a simple 3-part process built on the foundation of F.I.R.S.T, designed for the moments when pressure becomes personal. S for space, T for time, O for opportunity, and P, not for panic but for pause. Let's start with space. This is physical, tangible. It means deliberately removing yourself from the source of stress, not in retreat but in wisdom. A wife mid-argument steps outside for air. A customer service agent puts a hostile caller on hold for 30 seconds, not to escape but to reset. Space lets emotion loosen its grip. Then comes time. Time doesn't mean days or weeks. It means enough time for your body to calm, to breathe, to regulate. Because biology must be obeyed. Cortisol doesn't care about your good intentions. Adrenaline doesn't respond to willpower. A doctor, overwhelmed by a mounting inbox and endless demands, might close the office door, sit for 2 minutes, and simply breathe, slowly, fully, until her pulse becomes her own again. It could be an hour, a walk, a night of sleep, but not too long. Time away, if stretched too far, becomes avoidance, and decompression becomes delay. Finally, opportunity. This is where re-entry begins. Not rushed, not reactive. With patience, like untying a balloon, one knot at a time. A couple arguing over chores doesn't try to fix things in the heat of anger. They wait until Saturday, when coffee is warm and tension is distant, to have the conversation they actually need to have. Opportunity is about recognizing when your mind is clear enough to return to the issue with wisdom, not weaponry. It is the doorway to constructive engagement. Because sometimes the difference between a blow-up and a breakthrough is not what you say, but when you choose to say it. The S.T.O.P method doesn't suppress emotion, it channels it. It gives you room to think, time to feel, and a second chance to act from purpose, not pressure. It allows you to remember what matters most, not being right but being effective, not controlling the moment but preserving the relationship. And in a world where moments of tension arrive without warning, this practice, this pause, is not weakness. It is a rare form of strength. Final summary: pressure is inevitable, but destruction is not. Across every chapter of this journey, we've explored how high-stakes tension, whether in a negotiation room, a hospital corridor, a board meeting, or at the dinner table, doesn't have to become a trap. It can be a teacher. We began with the balloon, a deceptively simple metaphor for how stress accumulates quickly, releases slowly, and often catches us by surprise. Like the balloon that bursts with no warning, so too do we, if we don't learn to untie the knot in time. In Chapter 2, we examine the signs of personal overload, the slipping of the social mask, the cracks in performance, the descent from clarity into reactivity. And we discovered that identifying our limit is not weakness, but the beginning of mastery. Through the F.I.R.S.T framework, we found structure. We learned to pause and process, feelings to check what stirs within us, interests to recall what truly matters, relationships to map the pressure points and allies, situation to separate fact from fear, and tolls to count the hidden cost of carrying too much for too long. But even when time is scarce, Dunlap reminded us that we don't need perfect plans, just better ones. The 3R framework, realize, respond, realign, offered us a way to move forward through uncertainty, to act not with reckless speed nor fearful stillness, but with deliberate iteration. Like the negotiator, like the leader, we don't wait for the storm to pass. We move wisely within it. And finally, with the S.T.O.P protocol, we learned how to decompress, how to take space, allow time, seize opportunity, and ultimately, preserve what pressure threatens to unravel, our clarity, our connection, and our capacity to respond with purpose. So what does it mean truly to untie a balloon? It means learning how to breathe in the heat of conflict, to pause where we once panicked, to turn reaction into reflection. It means creating distance between stimulus and response, just enough to let wisdom slip through. This book and this episode isn't just about negotiation. It's about navigating pressure with grace. Whether you're managing crises at work, holding tension in a relationship, or facing the quieter conflicts inside your own mind, these tools are for you. Because life will stretch us. But if we learn to listen, to loosen, and to lead ourselves wisely, we can bend without breaking. We can breathe without bursting. We can untie the balloon